Okay. Okay, so you all know we're recording. Shabbat Shalom. Hope everybody's doing well. And I'm going to begin with the blessing for studying Torah. So I'm going to put that up on the screen. Well, I was going to put it up on the screen. Oh, there it is. Okay, let me just move it over a little bit. Oh, no, that's not it. Here it is. There it is. Okay. Everybody see it?
Is that your dog?
Now, my dog? No, I'm at the temple. Where's my dog? Oh, my dog is behind the screen. Oh, I see. Yes. It's not taking up the full screen. Okay. Whatever. So for those of you who are in here, let me push it back so we can kind of read it together. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asot
Torah.
Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of all, who hallows us with mitzvot and commands us to engage with words of Torah. Okay, good. Now before we stop this and stop sharing for a minute, because let's catch everybody up. We have Beth and Nick.
Sandy.
Welcome back. And
you're in person.
Yes. Oh, okay. Hi. All right. So since there are a few people who haven't been here either for a while or for a couple of weeks, let's catch people up. So we're in the middle of the story of, first of all, Elijah, prophet, very important figure in Judaism. In fact, Daniel Matt, who is the person who translated the entire Zohar, has just written a book about Elijah, which won some kind of prestigious award recently. So we're going to read more about him. So Elijah, of course, is the prophet of Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, or God. Now, the king at the time is, anybody remember who the king is? Ahab in Northern California. In Israel. Okay, remember after King Solomon was reigning, the kingdom split in two. In fact, there was never really a complete harmony between the North and the South. There was always, division, just like in this country.
What else is new?
Yeah, really, nothing's new under the sun, as Ecclesiastes said. It's all in here. So we have the North is the bad guy in this sequence of stories because Judah was the last man standing. And Judah gets to write the history. So in the North, you have all these terrible kings who, are not faithful to God. You know what? Would you mind doing me a favor? Can you open it?
Okay.
Oh, thank you. I'm sorry. Felice is coming. I don't know if she's going to have a hard time. It's open, but I just want to make sure she can get in. Thank you, Mitch. So, Ahab is a king from the North. From his father was Omri. And even though they reigned for quite a long time and they're relatively successful, they are not favorites of this writer. Good morning. Come on in.
Good morning.
We're on 1 Kings 18, and Lynn can tell you the page number because you have the same book. Okay. So we're talking about the Northern Kingdom. Ahab is the king. Now, he's a bad guy according to the history. Now, this history is written by the Deuteronomist history group. In other words, they're based on the theology of Deuteronomy. Now, Deuteronomy says, if you're good and you follow all my mitzvot, all will be well. It'll rain, you'll have food, everything will be great. If not, this guy's going to dry up and you're going to starve to death, which actually is part of the Shema.
7:13. You have the same book.
I'm reading something about the king's writer, and it says, and of those commandments supposed to obey, because idol worship seems to be the primary focus.
Yes. Okay, so what Lynn's saying is that the worst thing in this book at the moment, and this is before you get to the big prophets like Isaiah and Jeremiah and Ezekiel, right now in this history section, pretty much from Judges through the 2 books of Samuel, the 2 books of Kings, the worst thing you can do is not to be loyal to Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh. It's to go after other gods, idol worship, worshiping many gods, worshiping the gods of some other, community. We're sort of at the stage that scholars call monolatry, which is that there is an understanding that there are many gods, but only one, yours, is the one that counts and the most powerful. So being disloyal to Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh is a very, very bad thing. And of course, they get punished. Now, it's important to remember this business about rain, because remember that Israel has pretty much the same climate as Riverside. Now, it used to rain probably more than it has in the last few years here, but rain was very, very important. Otherwise, your crops didn't get watered. It wasn't like being in Mesopotamia where there were 2 rivers, or in Egypt where there's a Nile to irrigate the land. You had to depend on what was coming from up there, which is why people think that we have this understanding of God as being up there. Like, okay, you're making it rain. It must be up there, right? Okay. So this is very important to remember as we're going to begin this next chapter. But so Ahab married this woman named Jezebel. Now, the only thing about her that seems to be negative is the fact that she is from Phoenicia and they worship the god Baal. And Baal, who knows? Is he good, bad? It doesn't matter. He's not Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh. So therefore, that's a bad thing, right? And there was already a big contest, right, which we read a couple of weeks ago, between prophets of Baal and Elijah. Elijah speaks truth to power. He said something to Ahab that made Ahab angry. He ran away. And now there's this contest between 100, I think it's 400. Thank you, Lynn. 400 prophets of Baal. And what they're trying to do is bring fire down from God. And they can't get the fire to go. And Elijah takes his altar and puts water all over it. The fire comes down. Doesn't convince anybody, but so that's kind of where we are midway through the whole story of Elijah. And as I said, Elijah is very important. You'll see why. So now we're going to have a drought. And a drought, of course, signifies something is wrong, right? You did something wrong. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a drought. Okay. So for those who don't have the text, I'm going to share the screen and you guys can follow along. Here we are. Okay. You know what? I'm going to get rid of this. Okay. Would somebody like to read? And I can't see you now.
I can
so
read I can read a little bit.
Okay, Sandy, you can read first, and then who is the other person?
Jane.
Jane. All right. So first Sandy, and thank you, Randy. Okay. So let's get started. We're on chapter 18 of the first book of Kings. You have that, please?
Yeah.
Okay. Everybody have that? Okay. So go ahead, please.
After a long, no, it's not going to work.
Okay.
After a long time in the third, no, go ahead, somebody else. My voice is not good enough.
Okay. Jane.
Oh, thank you. I can do it for you, Sandy. After a long time, in the 3rd year, the word of the Lord came to Elijah. Go and present yourself to Ahab, and I will send rain on the land. So Elijah went to present himself to Ahab. Now the famine was severe in Samaria. And
Now remember
Ahab,
Samaria is the northern part of Israel, right? I mean,
Okay.
the country of Israel today. Yeah.
Now the famine was severe in Samaria, and Ahab had summoned Obadiah, his palace administrator. Obadiah was a devout believer in the Lord. While Jezebel was killing off the Lord's prophets, Obadiah had taken 100 prophets and hidden them in 2 caves, 50 in each, and had supplied them with food and water. Ahab had said to Obadiah, go through the land to all the springs and valleys. Maybe we can find some grass to keep the horses and mules alive, so we will not have to kill any of our animals. So they divided the land they were to cover, Ahab going in one direction and Obadiah in another.
Okay, let's just stop for 1 second. So this is a note from Robert Alter about 100 prophets. And by the way, since we all have different books, if you see something interesting in the translation that's different, please feel free to point it out. So 100 prophets, this large number suggests that they are not prophets directly assigned a specific mission by God, like Elijah. So Elijah specifically chosen, Jeremiah, whatever, but rather members of a kind of guild of prophets, probably figuring as ecstatics. Like remember in the Saul story, there were a bunch of ecstatics. Although, of course, the ecstasy is inspired by God. So this is a whole group of them. So it's not like, okay, Isaiah or Jeremiah or Ezekiel, God is specifically choosing you. It's a group, a guild of prophets. Self-appointed, who knows? Ahab swerving from God then is seen to have taken a new deadly turn, okay? Because he's already not been loyal to Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh. But now, not only does he foster the worship of Baal, but he also takes violent steps to extirpate devotion to Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh. In other words, killing off prophets. You're right. So this is like one step beyond being bad, really bad. Okay. Please continue.
Wait,
Okay.
Alex, would you explain the part about Jezebel killing prophets? I don't remember
Well,
that.
she was Jezebel killed off the prophets of Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, our God, because she doesn't want, she wants people to be devoted to Baal, her God, not to the gods of, to the prophets of our God. So there's been killing of prophets before, a number of chapters back. So here's all this stuff going on that, it's not only that we're not being, loyal, but we're killing off the representatives of our God.
Thank you.
Okay.
As Obadiah was walking along, Elijah met him. Obadiah recognized him, bowed down to the ground, and said, "Is it really you, my lord Elijah?" "Yes," he replied. "Go tell your master Elijah is here." "What have I done wrong?" asked Obadiah, "that you are handing your servant over to Ahab to be put to death? As surely as the Lord your God lives, there is not a nation or kingdom where my master has not sent someone to look for you. And whenever a nation or kingdom claimed you were not there, he made them swear they could not find you. But now you tell me to go to my master and say, Elijah is here. I don't know where the Spirit of the Lord may carry you when I leave you. If I go and tell Ahab and he doesn't find you, he will kill me. Yet I, your servant, have worshipped the Lord since my youth. Haven't you heard, my Lord, what I did while Jezebel was killing the prophets of the Lord? I hid 100 of the Lord's prophets in 2 caves, 50 in each, and supplied them with food and water. And now you tell me to go to my master and say, Elijah is here. He will kill me.
Okay, what do you notice about this dialogue between Elijah and Obadiah?
Well, Obadiah thinks this is a death sentence. You're not supposed to kill the messenger, but apparently in the ancient world you did.
Apparently so. But so notice that Elijah says, tell your master Elijah's here. And Obadiah goes on and on and on and on. So according to Robert Alter, the exchange between Obadiah and Elijah is one of the most spectacular deployments of the biblical technique of contrastive dialogue, in which the two speakers are sharply differentiated by antithesis in tone and attitude, and often by an opposition between brevity and prolixity. So in other words, you have one guy saying something declarative, I'm here, and the story, the other guy on and on and on. There's a reason for that. There's never no reason for things being done a certain way in the Bible.
And both of these are representatives of our God.
Well, Obadiah is a servant of the king, but he recognizes our God. He personally recognizes our God, but he's representing Ahab. By the way, Moby Dick might seem very different once you've read all of this, because remember, Ahab is the name of the captain.
Now, this is the Elijah we wait for.
Yeah.
You'll see why.
Case up.
You'll see why.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, this is that Elijah. Okay, So you've got these two people, you've got Elijah,
He lives. He lives on.
he does,
Yeah.
he never dies. We'll see
Oh,
that, yeah.
okay.
So Elijah expresses a concise imperative. Go and say to your Lord, Elijah is here. And then the steely resolution at the end of the dialogue. As the Lord of army lives, whom I have served today, I will appear before him. Obadiah, on the other hand, terrified by the prospect of conveying this message to Ahab, spouts a stream of highly nervous volubility, anxiously repeating twice what he regards as Elijah's impossible order to him, and at the same time defending his own record as a God-fearing man. You know, sometimes when people are nervous, they talk a lot, right? Some people say nothing, some people blah, 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 hoping to, you know, keep at bay whatever's coming. The effect is almost comical. He's a good man and has incurred danger in his loyalty to God, but he's also an ordinary man susceptible to fear. The contrast to the iron-willed Elijah is striking. At the same time, Obadiah's terror vividly reflects Ahab's ruthlessness as a paganizing monarch. So Elijah is like, I'm here to talk to Ahab. Fine, I have no fears. That's just, you know, what I do. And the servant is scared to death, really. You know, I'm probably going to be killed over this. Okay, but we're not done. Here we go. Oops, there we go. All right, Jane, you want to continue?
Yes. Elijah said, as the Lord Almighty lives, whom I serve, I will surely present myself to Ahab today. So Obadiah went to meet Ahab and told him, and Ahab went to meet Elijah. When he saw Elijah, he said to him, is that you, you troubler of Israel? Oh, I would love to issue a line like that, wouldn't you? I mean, it just really smacks you in the face. I have not made trouble for Israel, Elijah replied, but you and your father's family have. You have abandoned the Lord's commands and have followed the Baals. Now summon the people from all over Israel to meet me on Mount Carmel, and bring the 450 prophets of Baal and the 400 prophets of Asherah who eat at Jezebel's table. Okay. So Ahab sent word throughout all Israel and assembled the prophets on Mount Carmel. Elijah went before the people and said, how long will you waver between the two opinions? If the Lord is God, follow him. But if Baal is God, follow him. But the people said nothing. Then Elijah said to them, I am the only one of the Lord's prophets left, but Baal has 450 prophets. Get 2 bulls for us. Let Baal's prophets choose one for themselves, and let them cut it into pieces and put it on the wood, but not set fire to it. I will prepare the other bull and put it on the wood, but not set fire to it. Then you call on the name of your God, and I will call on the name of the Lord. The God who answers by fire, he is God. Then all the people said, what you say is good.
Yeah, this is the story I was telling before about this. Yeah.
So this is an acceptable test, right?
It's an acceptable test.
Well,
Because all the people said it was okay.
Well,
so the people are spineless, typically can't make up their mind and are looking for someone to make a decision for them.
Yeah.
And in the, you know, it was interesting. I looked at this and I thought, well, the bulls, that's like how people hire lawyers to get into the ring and supposedly fight out their disputes because they're not resolving them themselves. I haven't figured out a good analogy yet for the setting of the fire, but basically what you have is the inability of people to look at facts and make a rational decision. And so they're just wishy-washy and waiting
in
to
this
see who will
particular
win in the
case,
fight.
I guess in this particular case, we're trying to show which of the gods is the true God who will respond. And in those days, I guess, instead of having a gladiator fight or something, you had the two opposing religious groups trying to prove, right? Christine, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I think I wanted to add to what Melissa was saying, and they're spineless, yes, but they don't want to offend a more powerful being. If they certainly want to wait and see whether Baal is the one, and because otherwise he might rain fire down on them.
But isn't that always the case? I mean,
Yeah,
isn't
pretty
that
much.
always what the
Look at the
public
last
does
8
is
years.
put their finger in the air and hope they don't get criticized for actually speaking up against power?
Exactly.
But I definitely hear exactly, I mean, what you're saying. Because, here you have one prophet speaking truth. And I would hope by then the Israelites had figured it out about God. I mean, there's been so many miracles that occurred prior to this time, including the parting of the sea. And they're still doubtful. They still want to follow Baal.
Okay, this whole section from Judges all the way until we get to the, Isaiah. So Judges and the 2 books of Samuel and the 2 books of Kings, all the way through, Israel, as in the people, keeps straying off course and keep going after other gods over and over and over again. And they are punished over and over and over again. Like the punishment after the golden calf wasn't enough. That was way back in the desert, right? They continue to stray and they continue to be punished. And by the way, hello, what have we learned from all the previous historical events? We do the same thing over and over again too, right? And we get punished in one form or another. Like this whole business about, every generation has to learn the same lesson all over again. And if you
So
think
why
about,
doesn't human nature change?
you tell me that.
Yeah.
But
enough.
really, you look at this book and you go, what's changed? Nothing.
Nothing.
Sibling rivalry, power corrupting, blah, blah, right?
Right.
But then we're thinking people, and it's
What?
Well, she says maybe we're thinking people and it's good to question. Well, it's good to question why we never learn a darn thing. But, and this business about the Deuteronomic theology, which is very offensive in many ways, which is why the Reform movement took out the paragraph about if you obey my commandments, all will be well. If not, you're going to starve and die. They took it out because it's horrible. On the other hand, if you think of it just ecologically, that's what we've done to the earth. Those are the consequences. It has dried up. Hello, we have a drought, rivers. And I went to Salt Lake City a couple of weeks ago. Oh my God, the lake is gone.
Yeah, it's all dried up.
Oh my God,
The
it's
lake
a
is
shocking
gone.
thing to see that. It's like there's almost nothing left. It's all like dirt with a little bit of water in between.
What about
That'll be the Salton Sea very soon.
Well, desalinization is one way to, but
It's very expensive, I know.
but we've just drained and drained and drained the waterways, and we have a drought in the West, and here we are. It's exactly what is written in here. I don't want to be a Bible thumper, but yeah. Go ahead.
outgoing mayor of LA was quoted as saying, toilet to tap that will never run out of drinking water.
Oh,
No.
yeah. Toilet to tap. That's a good one.
I know.
Oh, well.
But that, it's more of a, there's one headline in a magazine that covered that subject. Years ago, had a picture of a margarita cup with a straw through it and says the yuck factor. So it's a psychological factor. You would not want to accept that.
Oh, that's what you meant by toilet to tap?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
It's actually it actually is water that is treated and then recharged in the aquifers and then pumped out again. I would happily drink water that had been gone through all of that filtration. And so there are moneyed interests that don't want to solve problems, like the D-cell guys who would object to toilet to tap because it's a competitive way to solve a problem. So there's a lot behind that. But in reality, people who live in Orange County are already drinking recycled toilet water. That's gone into a
that might explain it. Okay, let's move on from toilets.
They voted for Katie Porter, so it's not that bad down there.
Yeah. All right. Any other comments about the text, or should we move on to the next section?
Bulls, nothing kosher.
Oh, bulls are kosher.
Yeah, I guess it's from cattle. and-
Yeah.
Cattle, yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Just as long as they don't put
I- I
pigs on the
wondered
altar.
if it's symbolism.
No, the bulls, these are the kinds of things that were sacrificed. So the question is, of course, when you make a sacrifice of an animal, it's got to burn. If you can't get it to burn, and you're not offering it to God, right? So they need fire. And so now we have to see if the
Unless
fire
you
will
need it
come.
raw.
Taking the need to get rid of
Yeah,
all the
Suzanne?
blood.
Go ahead.
I guess the other thing that stood out to me is that like the people are being wishy-washy, but Ahab's right there and he's been killing people who are advocating for God, right? So what are they gonna say? So I mean,
Good point.
yes, there is the fear of God, but probably the more immediate fear is Ahab's right there.
Yeah. Ahab is, you're absolutely right about that. Ahab is pretty ruthless, and Jezebel is even more ruthless. So you're right. Trying to stand up to these guys is not, I mean, even Obadiah didn't want to even say that Elijah was there, right? So you're right. It's not completely that people are wishy-washy. They're scared also, but they're also wishy-washy. Okay. All right. So
Jezebel feeds 400 people at a table. Amazing.
Well, you need 2 bulls to feed them all. Yeah.
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 okay. So now, Jane, you want to continue?
Let's see.
25.
25, thank you. Elijah said to the prophets of Baal, choose one of the bulls and prepare it first, since there are so many of you. Call on the name of your God and do not light the fire. So they took the bull given them and prepared it. Then they called on the name of Baal from morning till noon. Baal, answer us, they shouted. But there was no response. No one answered. And they danced around the altar they had made. At noon, Elijah began to taunt them. Shout louder, he said. Surely he is a god. Perhaps he is deep in thought or busy or traveling. Maybe he is sleeping and must be awakened. So they shouted louder and slashed themselves with swords and spears, as was their custom, until the blood flowed. Midday passed and they continued their frantic prophesizing until the time for the evening sacrifice. But there was no response. No one answered. No one paid attention.
Mitch, we're just about to go to verse 30. Do you have that? Chapter 18, verse 30.
Do I have it?
No, I'm talking to Mitch. Yeah. Okay.
Uh-oh.
So, so clearly this is a wonderful scene here. I mean, just delightful. Like here are these, prophets of Baal desperately trying to show that their God is responsive to them, that the God, that he even exists, right? Nothing. And maybe he's sleeping. Let's shout louder and wake him up. Okay. Or maybe he's on a trip, went to the Bahamas for, a rest. I don't know. So yeah. And they're I mean, this is a contest, right? We have to prove which God is more powerful or which God is the real God. And this one is either sound asleep or does not exist. Trash talk?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Then Elijah said to all the people, come here to me. They came to him and he repaired the altar of the Lord, which had been torn down. Elijah took 12 stones, one for each of the tribes descended from Jacob, to whom the word of the Lord had come, saying, your name shall be Israel. With the stones, he built an altar in the name of the Lord, and he dug a trench around it large enough to hold the seahs of seed, 2 seahs of seed. He arranged the wood, cut the bull into pieces, and laid it on the wood. Then he said to them, fill 4 large jars with water and pour it on the offering and on the wood. Do it again, he said, and they did it again. Do it a 3rd time, he ordered, and they did it a 3rd time. The water ran down around the altar and even filled the trench. At the time of sacrifice, the prophet Elijah stepped forward and prayed, Lord, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, let it be known today that you are God in Israel and that I am your servant and have done all these things at your command. Answer me, Lord, answer me, so these people will know that you, Lord, are God, and that you are turning their hearts back again. Then the fire of the Lord fell and burned up the sacrifice, the wood, the stones, and the soil, and also licked up the water in the trench. When all of the people saw this, they fell prostrate and cried, "The Lord, he is God. The Lord, he is God."
By the way, that's Adonai Hu Ha-Elohim. Adonai Hu Ha-Elohim. Does that sound familiar?
Mhm.
Yeah.
From Yom
Yes.
Kippur. That's what we say at the end of Yom Kippur. So, Elijah has raised the stakes here. Not only is he going to ask his God to light up the altar, but he's going to put water on everything to make it even harder. And the fire then licks up even the water in the trench. So clear proof, right? Okay,
Then
now let's see.
Elijah, oh,
Yeah, I
go
was
ahead.
going to say, let's now see what Elijah does.
Oh, okay. Then Elijah commanded them, "Seize the prophets of Baal. Don't let anyone get away." They seized them, and Elijah had them brought down to the Kishon Valley and slaughtered there.
Okay, so let's just pause for a moment.
Nice.
So, yeah,
Nice guy.
we've got, Jezebel getting the prophets killed, right? And now we've got Elijah doing exactly the same thing. He is just as much of a zealot as she is for Baal. And he's not he's ruthless. And so you've got, they're fairly well matched. You've got Ahab, who's a king, who's powerful, who, because of his wife, kills the prophets of our God. And then you have this guy, Elijah, doing the exact same thing. Yes, Melissa.
So I've often wondered, given what we read, particularly at this point in Torah, that once your enemies are down, it's just best to kill them. Because I would have thought that Elijah, having won the battle, would have been gracious in victory. Something we're always told: be gracious in victory. People can repent, blah blah blah. And yet, really, all he did was turn around and just kill everybody. So
Well,
it isn't only that he was equal to Jezebel. It was like maybe it was self-preservation in the long term.
Well, probably. If you leave those prophets floating around, they might turn around and start, trying to convince people to go after Baal again. Absolutely. But you notice that in all the battles we've been reading about, there's, you kill everybody, you save some booty for yourself, unless that booty has been designated for God, right? And you're not allowed to touch it. That's what happened to Saul, who touched or let his people touch, take some booty, which was supposed to be dedicated to God. But otherwise, it's pretty horrible, right? You take some women as slaves and, as wives, and kill all the men and destroy their property.
I guess I'm always looking for what lessons we're supposed to take away from these examples, and I struggle with that.
Okay, so let me ask you.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no. Well, let me ask you, what lesson do you get from this?
Kick the shit out of the people that I've just conquered. Yeah, I really do. I have to tell you. This is something I grapple with all the time when I have the ability to, engage in a kind of retribution when someone's undermined me about something politically or the like. And there's always that issue of,
Uh-oh, we lost your voice. Something's wrong. Yeah, okay. Felicia, you were going to say something while she's getting back on. Not supposed to murder, but if you're in a war, there's a code of war, which is actually in Deuteronomy also. And that is that you offer peace to your enemies first. And if they don't accept the peace, then you are allowed to do things. But you're also supposed to, when you lay siege to a city, you're supposed to leave one side open so people can escape. But in these days, I don't know how merciful you can be in war. I don't know. Do other people have other lessons they've learned from this particular kind of story? We saw Pinchas. Remember? Yes, just one sec. So remember Pinchas? Remember what he did when he found an Israelite? Yeah, he made shish kebab out of the guy and his lover. Okay, so and then he gets the priesthood. So it's called a covenant of peace. Okay, Suzanne, go ahead, sorry.
I guess there are two things that struck me. One is that Elijah says already early on that he's doing everything he's doing because God commanded him to do it that way. And so, like, I think somebody mentioned earlier something about like testing God or something, setting up a test between the gods. And the way that Elijah is posing it is not that it's a test, but that God told him do this, 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 and this. And so he's going to obey and do it. And the other thing that struck me was the idea of not having gods before God, that there could be a moral code that is different between killing your enemies and killing somebody who is promoting or leading the people to another god. I'm not arguing that that should be the case, but that if that is sort of the prime thing, that one could argue that that could be the rationale.
Okay. I mean, listen, what did God order Abraham to do? Right? You have to be willing to kill your kid. Now, God didn't make him kill his kids, but he had to be willing. So this is a very violent kind of society, and I don't think the lessons we learn is, this is how we should conduct war today. However, you can think of it as, for example, Rabbi Norman Cohen he's written a whole book about it, I think, but about the Abraham and Isaac thing, that it's about the psychological issue that arises when a son is old enough to, basically threaten his father, right? Because he's now bigger and stronger, and there's the whole Freudian thing and whatever. And so even though there isn't the kind of violence necessarily that we have in the Bible, where you're willing to take him up on a mountain and, slash his chest, the fact is that, there is often a certain kind of psychological violence between a father and a son, right? And maybe we don't destroy our enemies by killing them all the way they do here, but as Melissa was suggesting before, there are other ways of taking revenge. Let's start a hearing. Let's
get them fired.
Poor Dr. Fauci is now going to be subjected to hearings about all his great big transgressions. Okay. So there are other ways of committing this kind of violence, right? We've just become more sort of sophisticated at doing it. And we have used all kinds of legal terms to say, this is a justified thing that we're doing, right? So Melissa, go ahead.
Well, and also I think there are a lot of religious extremists today running around justifying their bad behavior based on passages like these, which
Precisely.
is, again, there's this constant struggle that I certainly engage in ethically and morally about which way is it? Do I try to compromise, try to assume the best of the other side, blah, 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 or do I just shoot them in the knees? Right. And it's a daily dilemma, but I also see how in our country we're ending up with, obviously people who think God is on their side are always dangerous, no matter who those people are. Like Susan was saying, well, perhaps he was just doing what he thought was right because he believed that was what God was telling him to do, which is a rationalization we also see. So it's
and remember also, for example, in the battle between the Democrats and the Republicans, right? The Democrats tend to not use the kind of dirty tricks that Republicans use. Not to say that they don't ever do it, but they tend to try to be more like, let's do this based on, fairness or whatever. And Republicans tend to be much more ruthless, and they get further that way. And so the question is, do you try to not be as ruthless as the other guy? And then what happens to you? You get taken advantage of. Right, we
go higher than we lose.
Exactly.
Listen,
we
Michelle
go high
Obama.
when they go low, which is not always the case, but it's just
no.
Or messaging. Even just coming up with messaging that's really effective, which it distorts the message in some ways. But
and I'll tell you and I just want to say one more thing. We also, just even in these last passages, we're sort of like, well, if you follow the mitzvot, if you live a good life, you will have rain. So on the one hand, we get all of these messages about being a decent human being, and I'm waiting to see who that decent human being is in the Bible. I guess that's Moses. But, I'm looking for role models where I can go, oh, if I behave like that, even when it's hard, these good things will happen. And
No, no, no.
instead, what I
Mm.
get is the other. Yeah.
Okay, there is nobody in the Bible who is the perfect human being, and not even Moses, because as you recall, he was
He
not
got
allowed
angry.
into the promised land because he got angry, and he was not the first
Right.
time. Remember, the first time we meet him, what does he do?
Breaks
He's
off.
angry.
He murders somebody. The very
Yeah,
first time we meet him as an
legitimately.
adult.
Yeah.
You know, there you go. What more needs to be said about people? Yeah, Lynn.
Bible is more examples of what.
Yeah. I mean, even, yeah, all our patriarchs are really flawed. Right?
Yeah.
And the matriarchs too, in one way or another.
Other way, I'm thinking of 1-to-1, David and Goliath.
Mm.
On the other hand, you know, I think of retaliation of what happened to Dina and castration. But if you leave prophets, at least some, and all of them were killed apparently. I don't
No.
know. I don't know if that's, you know,
No,
it doesn't matter.
these
but,
guys, 100 of them were killed here.
to tell the story of good and evil. And we're constantly in my own family, you know, and Reverend Jane of First Congregational Church invited you to talk about why is our God so evil.
I don't think I said that.
No. You were asked to address.
To address the Christian idea that the God of the Old Testament is
always correcting the evil. That's what I meant. If I'm
Yeah.
wrong, but
Yeah.
I have a comment on the flawed humans.
Yeah.
Uh,
Oh, what happened to? Huh. Uh-oh, did I lose everybody? No. Okay, sorry.
No, you're here.
Okay, things just something else is on the screen. Okay. There we go. Okay.
the humans in the biblical stories and the historical stories have to be flawed because they don't want anybody else to compete with God. God is the only in these stories, God is the perfect, and we are
Good point.
trying to emulate God as best we can, but we're flawed.
Good point. Good point.
But another thing that if I'm thinking of that, when we have an enemy, these are Phoenicians, Philistines, excuse
Now
me,
these are Phoenicians.
Phoenicians, which are different from Philistines.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the Phoenicians, the only reason they're really our enemy in this case is because of the different God that they worship, not because they've done any awful thing to us. As a matter of fact, Ahab marrying the Phoenician princess, basically, which is what Jezebel is a way to increase commerce and political cooperation and all that. So it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's only bad to the extent that it's now influenced the cult. Okay.
We weren't told.
Wait.
Okay, Christine, one last comment, then we're going to go on.
I was, you were asking what we could get out of this, and Melissa always has these really good insights. And but for me, the only thing that I can pull out of it, and I know this isn't the intention in the text or one of the intentions in the text, but it's the chutzpah of going for power always ends in bloodshed, vengeance, and a cycle of violence. And that if you are in pursuit of power, it is itself evil. And so, you know, yeah, they kill everybody, and then inevitably somebody kills them. And you know, it's
Or you kill yourself. I think that the
it's
problem
like really, because every time I
right.
read this, I was thinking of Trump saying, "What was your agenda for your second term?" And you know, if he got in, and he said vengeance or revenge, and you know, so this pursuit of power is the embodiment of like, you know, a no-win solution.
That's
I
a very
think
good
that,
point. Thank you. But
it requires a lot of people who become very powerful and have ambition for power often have so much hubris, so
Yes.
that they bring themselves down. And you have, you know, for there to be someone with power who exercises it and wields it judiciously, I think you have to be such an adult, which I certainly have never acquired those characteristics that I would want power, because it's dangerous.
Can I point out a distinction that is made oftentimes in non-state peoples, who generally do not favor people who are interested in power? You know, the chiefs among the Native Americans were never the ones who were pursuing power. They were always the ones who were thinking of the good of the community. And
How unusual.
well, it's not so unusual in non-state peoples. It's really
Yeah,
not unusual there.
Yeah.
And and
Yes,
the
but look
reward-
what happened to the Native Americans, and that's
Well,
the,
that's not
the
their
opposite
fault.
thing of why you need power.
Yeah,
No,
well,
of
that's
course, but because
that's-
they lost power, they lost.
yeah. You're
yeah,
so
and then
that's
you end
another.
up in genocide anyway.
Well, that's
but-
another situation where I think if you say we're going to be different and not engage in these ruthless tactics, what happens?
Get taken advantage of.
Yeah, but this is part of the speaking truth to power movements around the world that
Right.
we're starting to see, which is the rejection of the pursuit of power, not having the fearless leader, but having a diffuse. This is like a recreation of some of these lessons that other people have been trying to tell us, except we killed them, for a long time. And instead of power, there are people in the communities who are recognized as wise. This is what, you know, the authoritarian is just the wrong pathway for this, but it's like Hannah Arendt's notion of authority rather than authoritarianism.
So
You know,
I think I
somebody
think this
has
is-
something to say that is worth listening to. Okay.
No, I think these are very excellent points that you guys are making about power and about ruthlessness and about the sort of historical recreation of the same old story over and over again. And it does point out the pitfalls of being in a position of power. All right, we're going to go on though, because there's lots more to read. And if Jane, if you don't mind finishing this chapter.
No, not at all.
Wait, let's see, we're here.
So where are we?
41.
41?
Yeah.
And Elijah said to Ahab, "Go eat and drink, for there is the sound of heavy rain." So Ahab went off to eat and drink, but Elijah climbed to the top of Carmel, bent down to the ground, and put his face between his knees.
By the way, so now it's pouring rain, right?
Mhm.
Because Elijah told this to Ahab a chapter or two ago. I'm the one who has the power to create rain because I'm representing, God. And now he's proven that, which doesn't make him any more popular. Okay, sorry, go ahead.
"Go and look toward the sea," he told his servant, and he went up and looked. "There is nothing there." There's nothing there, he said. 7 times Elijah said, "Go back." The 7th time, the servant reported, "A cloud as small as a man's hand is rising from the sea." So Elijah said, "Go and tell Ahab, hitch up your chariot and go down before the rain stops you." Meanwhile, the sky grew black with clouds, the wind rose, a heavy rain started falling, and Ahab rode off to Jezreel. The power of the Lord came on Elijah, and tucking his cloak into his belt, he ran ahead of Ahab all the way to Jezreel.
So basically what he's doing here is kind of taunting, Ahab, like, you better start running ahead of me because, you're never going to catch up to me. So giving him a head start. Okay, I saw that there's something in the chat. Yeah, go ahead.
Is he telling Ahab to move because the rain is going to be so heavy that it's going to he's going to drown in it? I mean, why is he telling all this to
Remember, we're playing this sort of cat and mouse game.
Oh,
Now here's what what's his name? Alter says, but I think there's a cat and mouse game going on here, and just the way Elijah poured water on the altar to make it even harder to get the fire to burn up the sacrifice.
One-upmanship.
Well, it's sort of
That's it.
saying, I'm giving you a head start, but you're never going to catch up with me. So he girded
Yep.
his loins and ran before Ahab till you come to Jezreel. Some interpret Elijah's running ahead of Ahab's chariot as a gesture of alliance with the king. More probably, he is again demonstrating a power superior to the king's, filled with the divine, I don't know what this word is, afflatus, A-F-F-L-A-T-U-S. Never saw that word in my life. Okay. He sprints ahead of the king's chariot all the way to Jezreel, outstripping the galloping horses. So I think that's what it is. I think it's that he's kind of saying, I'm going to give you a head start before you get stuck by the rain. And, see if you can catch me, Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, I just wondered. And this is off the wall question. We're reading out of some kind of Christian text, aren't
Yes,
we?
we are.
Oh,
Because
okay. Because do you have
reason-
the translation of the Hebrew word that they're using for God, for Lord? I mean, when
For
I read
Lord?
that, kind of tripped over it. Is it
what,
Yahweh?
Mitch, can I see Okay,
Hashem?
Mitch has his, I'm sure it is Adoni or something. Let's see.
Oh,
What verse were you
okay. I
talking
just
about?
wondered what they were
What
using.
verse?
For Hebrew text. Any verse where it was saying Lord, Lord. I read it
Throughout.
in this chapter, wherever they have the word
20.
God, that they're using.
Oh,
the
God
Lord.
would be, well, let's see. Let me see.
Are they using anything special? It's
46,
just an off the wall question.
Yeah,
I can look up myself.
Vayar Yud He Vav He.
Oh, okay.
Or
Okay.
Vayad. Okay, I'm sorry. Vayad Yud He Vav He.
Okay.
The hand of God. Now, when he calls him the Lord, I'm trying to see when the guy calls Elijah my Lord.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's going in a different direction. Each book goes in a different direction, and so you're going, how do I find this? Okay, when Obadiah talks to him, let's see,
Yeah.
15.
Well, maybe 5 years.
37. Are we talking about the Lord?
Well, the Lord of hosts is Yud He Vav He, Yud He Vav He. Oh, Obadiah went to meet him.
Somebody calling Elijah my Lord.
Yeah, I don't know exactly where it is, but it's
Okay,
usually
so
I
it
do
would
need.
be 1 Kings 18. I think it would be 21.
21?
This is just one. If it's the Lord God, go follow him, and if it's Baal, go follow him. When they say the Lord God, are they just using Yahweh?
That's so far, it seems to be in every case the
Oh,
name
okay.
that's used. Let me just see.
Oh, all
Yeah,
right.
Yud He Vav He is what's, or Yud He Vav He Ha Elohim. So
Mhm.
yeah, that's
Oh, okay.
Yahweh.
All right.
Basically.
Just wondered.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry about that. We have all these different books here, and they all go in different directions, so you don't know which way to turn the page.
So that's what
Yeah.
I think what Elijah's doing is cementing that. If you don't believe, if you thought maybe that was a trick, now I'm going to show you other things to show you that the Lord God
Is with me.
is with me. Yeah.
Good, good. Yeah, okay. Great. All right, so we're going to go on to the next chapter. Does somebody else want to read?
Are we still believing to the Ahab?
I'll read.
Israelites don't.
Christine had her hand up.
Yeah, I'm going to have Christine read it and then Melissa. I'm sorry. Go ahead, please.
Are there still a belief amongst Ahab and the Israelites that God isn't God, that there might be another God?
Sure. Yeah, that's constantly. There's a constant sense that there might be another God, maybe better. Who knows? You're influenced by the people around you.
When you kill people, I don't want to address, but it came to mind that you're perpetuating, in a sense, anti-Semitism.
Well, I don't think we're perpetuating anti-Semitism here, except to the extent that what you said before, the God of the Old Testament supposedly being the God of vengeance and all that. I mean, if you read the New Testament, it's not so beautiful and sweet either.
Right.
So this is the way we as human beings have come to understand what we consider to be God. Okay, it was written by human beings, right? At least
Right.
that's our belief. And this is how we understand God, that, if there's no rain, if you're, especially if you're coming from thousands of years ago, it's like, it must be that there's a God up there who won't let it rain. And why is that? Well, we must have been bad. And that allows us to control things, because we can say, well, all we have to do is be good, and now it's going to rain. Okay. So Christine, why don't you go ahead? It's chapter 19.
Yeah, now Ahab.
We finished 19? No, we're on 19.
Oh, yeah, I'm
Sorry.
sorry. Seeing how long it was.
Okay. Christine.
Christine's
You want me to
is
read?
muted.
I can read if
That
you
would
want.
help,
if
wouldn't
she's-
it? Okay. Now Ahab told Jezebel everything Elijah had done and how he had killed all the prophets with a sword. So Jezebel sent a messenger to Elijah to say, "May the gods deal with me, be it ever so severely, if by this time tomorrow I do not make your life like one of them." Elijah was
Famous
afraid.
last words, by the way.
Yeah, I know, really. Yeah, don't tempt fate, folks.
Don't, yeah. Go ahead.
Elijah was afraid and ran for his life. When he came to Beersheba in Judah, he left his servant there, while he himself went on a day's journey into the wilderness. He came to a broom bush and sat down under it and prayed that he might die. "I have had enough, Lord," he said. "Take my life. I am no better than my ancestors." Then he lay down under the bush and fell asleep. All at once, an angel touched him and said, "Get up and eat." He looked around, and there by his head was some bread baked over hot coals and a jar of water. He ate and drank and then lay down again.
Okay, so thank you. Before we go on, does this scene remind you of anything?
Yes.
What does it remind you of?
Job.
Okay, well, okay, we have Jacob who lay down, that's true. But there's something even closer to this in terms
Not
of
Job.
prophets.
Job.
Not
yeah.
Job. I mean, Job also basically says, I wish I'd never been born. That is true. But a scene pretty much like this. Remember Jonah?
Oh.
Oh,
Again, we read Jonah,
Right.
and he goes, there's a little kikaron. We don't know exactly what that is, some sort of a strange plant that grows up over him, provides him with shade. And he also wants to die. Remember, he wants to die because he prophesied against Nineveh, and they were never punished. They all supposedly, repented and were forgiven instantly. But so it's interesting. It's kind of an echo one to the other. I think that Jonah is more of an echo of this, and a kind of ironic echo,
But I also think when it's hard for people to fight, they get exhausted and wish it were over. I fought on things where I thought, oh, could I lose the case, please, so I don't have to keep doing this. And the other thing I like about this passage is, I gotta say, the women were kick-ass. It wasn't like, oh, it was just the men who were out like being really super aggressive that people were afraid of. So it's kind of interesting because, ultimately we evolved or devolved, but people thinking that women don't have it in them to fight, which I don't ever understand given historically.
Well, look at Judith and at Devorah, and at Yael, peg right into the skull. Okay.
Look at Catherine the Great.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Hello.
So let's see what happens. Even though there's an angel that comes and takes care of him, of course. All right.
Do you want me to go on?
Please.
Okay. And the word of the Lord came to him. "What are you doing here, Elijah?" He replied,
Wait. We're on 7. We're on 7.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Angel of the Lord.
The angel of the Lord came back a second time and touched him and said, "Get up and eat, for the journey is too much for you." So he got up and ate and drank. Strengthened by that food, he traveled 40 days and 40 nights until he reached Horeb, the mountain of God. Then he went into a cave and spent the night.
Okay,
That's
what's Horeb?
Wait,
what's Horeb?
The mountain of God.
Sinai.
It's
It's
Mount
Sinai.
Sinai, right? That's another name for Sinai. And of course, 40 days and 40 nights.
Moses.
Yeah, right.
Jesus does the same thing
Lent.
later.
That's a lot for one meal.
Yeah, really. One meal and 40 days and 40 nights. Wow.
But it is interesting. It is interesting how they always go back to the 40 days. You know, it's almost
yeah.
like they always say in 40 days you can change any bad habit.
Really?
Yeah, well, you know, they
Well,
say.
it's taken us so far several thousand years, but we still haven't changed our habits.
Yes.
Okay,
No.
All right.
keep going, Christine.
And the word of the Lord came to him. What are you doing here, Elijah? He replied, I have been very zealous for the Lord God Almighty. The Israelites have rejected your covenant, torn down your altars, and put your prophets to death with the sword. I am the only one left, and now they are trying to kill me too. The Lord said, go out and stand on the mountain in the presence of the Lord, for the Lord is about to pass by. Then a great and powerful wind tore the mountains apart and shattered the rocks before the Lord. But the Lord was not in the wind. After the wind, there was an earthquake, but the Lord was not in the earthquake. After the earthquake came a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire came a gentle, oh God, the postman's coming. And after the fire came a gentle whisper. When Elijah heard it, he pulled his cloak over his face and went out and stood at the mouth of the cave. I don't
Okay,
think I
so-
should read anymore.
Okay. So a couple of things. First of all, okay, well, we're getting there. I want to go to something first. Okay, so for the first thing is, remember Jonah felt very unsuccessful as a prophet in the sense that, well, yeah, they repented, but it was too quick and they didn't deserve it and whatever. Here too, Elijah's feeling like he's not a success. Here, I did all this stuff to prove that God is God, and they weren't convinced. Ahab still wants to kill me. He's already killed everybody else. Now he wants to kill me. So again, that's a parallel, I think, with Jonah. And you know, well, we all know what it's like, right? We all know what it's like to try and to be unsuccessful and to feel bummed out about it, right? So it's very realistic, I think, that he would feel this way. I mean, he's a prophet, yes, but he's also a human being. Now, the other thing is the still small voice, which was translated here as some sort of a whisper. Let me see how murmuring sound. There are a lot of different ways. Let me see where it says, and on the fire and look of voice. Oh, a sound of minute stillness is how Robert Alter translates it. So what do you make of that? That God was not in the fire. God was not in the earthquake. God was in the, well, we say still small voice very often. The minute stillness, murmuring whisper, whatever. I mean, any thoughts about what that is all about?
God
Yeah,
is
Christine.
everywhere.
Okay, God is everywhere. Okay.
But
Yeah.
you have to listen, right? I
Good.
mean, you have to be aware.
Yeah. Now remember when Moses is going in the wilderness, right? And he notices that there's a bush, a fire, but it's not being, eaten by the fire. He says, let me turn aside. So paying attention, right? If you don't pay attention, you're going to miss it. Good. Okay. Jane, did you have something? Then Felice.
Yeah. The thing is that we do say God is in the fire, God is in the downpour because of this reward punishment motif of Deuteronomy. If you do good, I'll reward you. If you do bad, these are the various punishments that I can come up with and have come up with. So to read that God is not in the fire, God is not in the rain, that God is actually in the stillness, because what brings it to my mind immediately, of course, is the Holocaust. And everybody said, where is God? God is absent from the Holocaust, and we struggle. I think most Jews struggle with this. It's unexplainable.
Okay, good. All right, Felice, did you want to? No? All right, I'm going to read you what Alter has to say about this. Okay, Elijah is commanded to assume the stature of Moses, right? Go up on the mountain for 40 days. But the epiphany he is vouchsafed vigorously revises the details of Moses's epiphany. Okay, Moses Where do we see God during Moses? But what were some of the symbols of God?
10 Commandments.
Yeah, but I'm saying in terms of physical manifestations.
Oh, all that.
Burning
thunder.
bush, fire
Yeah.
a lot of times is where God is, right? The mountain, remember Mount Sinai was basically, there was an
Yeah.
earthquake or something, or a rumbling of a volcano.
The parting
That's
of the
what
water.
announced the 10 Commandments. So God was in those places in those stories, right? God will reveal himself not in storm or fire or the shaking of the mountain, which is how God appeared before, but in a small, barely audible sound. On Mount Carmel, God did speak through fire. Remember, the fire came down to show that God was God. And here at Horeb, he speaks in a more subtle language, for the deity is by no means limited to seismic manifestations, rather. In other words, sometimes it's obvious that there's some kind of miracle in your life or some kind of blessing. And sometimes it's very subtle. And you have to look everywhere. It's not, it's not going to, I like to say that, when Moses is going along and the bush is burning and he turns aside to look at it, that's when God speaks to him. God doesn't jump out in front of you and go, here I am. It's like we have to, right? We have to do our share to meet God. And that is to be aware. And that's the whole thing about mindfulness, right? All that sort of Jewish spirituality that's been going on for the last, 20 years. Mindfulness, right? You meditate so that you can be present. So that you're not always thinking about something else, the future, the past, whatever. You're present right now and you're aware of what's out there. And that's why we say blessings. So that we can be mindful. Oh, I'm about to eat a piece of bread. I need to be mindful that this is a privilege, a blessing, right? So that's the lesson we're learning here. God sometimes does appear in the fire. He just did a few verses back. But sometimes that's not where you look for God. Got to be really alert. Yes, Sherry.
It reminds me of what I heard on TV today about the volcano in the Big Island in Hawaii.
Yeah.
The Hawaiians see that as a blessing from their God because it's flourishing the land, the lava is making fertile soil,
Oh,
and it
wow.
helps the island grow. So
Definitely.
I see a corollary there. It's very interesting. The same
Great.
kind of thing.
Great.
They interviewed some native Big Island Hawaiians, and that's what they said.
Also may destroy their homes. And
It could
things.
destroy their homes too. Yeah, but I guess maybe what's the priority to have fertile
Yeah,
land?
but
or
right
not?
now they're looking at it as a blessing.
Well, that's also the thing that we can all look at things as a blessing or a curse, right?
Right.
Yes.
But
You know,
also
you-
Pele is also reminding people that that she is the land,
Mhm.
that
Nature.
she is, and if
Right,
they
right.
don't control
Right,
Oh, yes, that too, yes.
right. But it's like sometimes somebody, I don't know, let's say you have a child that has certain disabilities and you think, oh, why did this happen to me? Or you could say it's a blessing because now I appreciate things I wouldn't have appreciated otherwise in this child that the child is teaching me, right? So it's also our perspective on things, right? Any other comments before we move on? Okay, so do you want to keep reading? Let's see. Yeah,
now that the dogs have
okay.
stopped yelling. Okay. Okay, where are we?
This is the
Oh,
second.
go back. Here it is.
Then a voice said, this is like the
Oh, I
second
thought-
time he's
I-
asked the same question.
Okay, then a voice said to him, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" He replied, "I have been very zealous for the Lord God Almighty. The Israelites have rejected your covenant, torn down your altars, and put your prophets to death with the sword. I am the only one left, and now they're trying to kill me too." The Lord said to him, "Go back the way you came and go to the desert of Damascus. When you get there, anoint Hazael king over Aram. Also anoint Jehu, son of Nimshi, king over Israel, and anoint Elisha, son of Shaphat,
Elisha.
from Abel Meholah, to succeed you as prophet. Jehu will put to death any who escape the sword of Hazael, and Elisha will put to death any who escape the sword of Jehu. Yet I reserve 7,000 in Israel, all whose knees have not bowed down to Baal and whose mouths have not kissed him.
So Ahab and Jezebel have not seen the light. So they're going to need to be killed now. Again, you can see why some people look at this as, the God of vengeance, etc. Again, that is not my take on it, but that's the way certain people look at it. And you can see why. This is not Mr. Compassionate here. Okay, so now if Elisha is going to be appointed as the next prophet, then, although it's kind of strange, I don't think there are any other situations where a prophet appoints the next prophet. Nonetheless, he's like an apprentice prophet. So he's going to find some guy, which means Elijah's days are numbered. And let's see what happens with Elisha. Okay, if you want to just finish the chapter, please.
Sure. So Elijah went from there and found Elisha, son of Shaphat. He was plowing with 12 yoke of oxen, good grief, and he himself was driving the 12th pair. Elijah went up to him and threw his cloak around him. Elisha then left his oxen and ran after Elijah. "Let me kiss my father and mother goodbye," he said, "and then I will come with you." "Go back," Elijah replied. "What have I done to you?" So Elisha left him and went back. He took his yoke of oxen and slaughtered them. He burned the plowing equipment to cook the meat and gave it to the people, and they ate. Then he set out to follow Elijah and became his servant.
Okay, so what's happening here is Elisha is taking the gear for the oxen and using that as firewood, which is basically symbolic of, I'm done being a farmer. Now I'm going to move on to become a prophet. Okay, so let me see if anybody has any comments. I see there's something in the chat. Let's see. Nature wins in the end. The houses were placed somewhere ill-advised. We see this every year in Florida, and then have people think, God, why me? As if God is responsible for bad planning. That's true. I mean, a lot of, we know, for example, in Houston, they built in an area, surprise, when there was a storm, didn't work. And we do that a lot. We also build on hills where, there's fire and then there's rain and the houses go sliding down and they rebuild in the same place. So a lot of that is our own fault. Some of it isn't. If there were an earthquake here now, a bad one, it's not because we built in California, but everywhere you go, there's going to be something. Nature is more powerful than we are.
Right.
And we're reminded of that all the time. Yeah, Suzanne, go ahead.
I don't understand what Elijah is asking when he says, "Go back, what have I done to you?"
Yeah, I found that real. And this is what Alter says. It seems more plausible not to construe these words as a rebuke for hesitancy on the part of Elisha, but as an assent. Why shouldn't you go back to take fond leave of your parents? I have made no unreasonable demands on you. I think it's translation issues and punctuation issues that make it unclear what he means by that. Like, what have I done to you? But basically, what Alter is saying is a better way to read it is to say, cool, go say goodbye to your parents and come with me, and I won't make any unreasonable demands.
Is there anything in Hebrew similarities in, at least in English, the phonetics of the two names of
Elisha and Elijah?
Yeah.
I mean, they're very close, but I don't.
Elisha is he, right?
Yeah.
Or is it, okay.
Yeah, pronouns were important in those days too. He, him.
A lot of names were close, which is why I keep using Patrick King's name.
Yeah, I have to.
Slightly different.
Mitch, do you mind if I look at? Mitch has the only Hebrew text here, unfortunately. Okay, let me look. In which direction?
While you're doing that, I don't think 100 years ago people would have, or longer, would have just rebuilt places when there was repeatedly natural disasters that destroyed their towns. So there's a kind of hubris that has, which is very American, the manifest destiny. We can do what we want. We can rebuild anything we have because we're so wealthy. And I think that will change over time because
I hope you're right.
Well, it's not sustainable. It's just not sustainable.
Okay, so both of the names have Eli, which means my God.
Oh,
okay.
Yeah.
Now, Elijah in Hebrew is Eliyahu.
Okay.
Okay. Elisha is Elisha. but they both have Eli, my God. And a lot of the names have, the name of God in them too.
Okay. Makes sense.
So, let's,
And we're talking about a female.
no, she asked me if it was him.
Okay.
I said, yes, they use, we're into pronouns here too. Yeah,
I just want to.
they were all binary, yes. Christy,
Well, the Bible seems to be pretty darn binary. But
all right,
the,
Christine, go ahead.
But I just wanted to point out that, having 12 oxen to plow a field is a sign
lot.
of enormous
Of
wealth.
wealth.
So
Well,
he's
Yeah,
a
that's a good
really
point.
well-to-do farmer, so.
Good point, good point.
So
And
he's
12 is
leaving
also
everything
symbolic.
behind. But
Yeah.
also
Yeah.
his
The
parting
tribes.
is also still trying to take care of the people by feeding
Mhm.
them oxen and so on and so forth. So he's being marked as a really good person.
Thank you. Yeah, Jane.
I thought the 12 oxen was a symbol for the
Yeah.
12 tribes.
I think
you know,
that's the case.
Going to take
Yeah.
on this position of being the prophet to the 12 tribes.
Right. Yeah, I definitely think when you see 12, it's referring to the tribes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You see
Well-
40, you think about Moses. There are all
The other
these
thing
numbers.
on the what have I done to you? It's sort of like, ugh, like I got to do this. I
Yeah.
mean, I think that Elijah would have recognized how incredibly hard it is to fulfill this role.
Yeah,
and
ain't fun. Speaking truth to power is not fun.
Nope, no,
But also
not rewarded either.
it's bananas to tell somebody they can't say goodbye to their parents.
Yeah.
It's like,
And you know what?
Yeah,
It's
what
not
have I
like
done
anybody
to
thanks you
you?
for any of this either.
yeah.
All right, so let's start. Chapter 19 is chapter 20 is long, but let's get started on it. And maybe Melissa, you can read. Let me go to the next one.
I'll read. Let
Right,
me know when you're there. Okay, footnote.
All right, here we are. Let me just go down.
Yeah. Best value of digital Bible. Just
There we
kidding.
go.
Okay, now Ben-Hadad, king of Aram, mustered his entire army. Accompanied by 32 kings with their horses and chariots, he went up and besieged Samaria and attacked it. He sent messengers into the city to Ahab, king of Israel, saying, "This is what Ben-Hadad says, your silver and gold are mine, and the best of your wives and children are mine." The king of Israel answered, "Just as you say, my lord the king, I and all I have are yours." The messengers came again and said, "This is what Ben-Hadad said. I sent to demand your silver and gold, your wives and children. But about this time tomorrow, I am going to send my officials to search your palace and the houses of your officials. They will seize everything and everything you value and carry it away." The king of Israel summoned all of the elders of the land and said to them, "See how this man is looking for trouble? When he sent for my wives and my children, my silver and my gold, I did not refuse him." The elders and the people all answered, "Don't listen to him or agree to his demands." So he replied to Ben-Hadad's messengers, "Tell my lord the king, your servant will do all you demanded the first time, but this demand I cannot meet." They left and took the answer back to Ben-Hadad.
Okay,
Then
so
Ben-Hadad-
basically he was willing to give
They're
his
negotiating.
money, but he's not willing to give his courtiers material, nor his wives and his kids. So he's like, okay, this is how much I'm going to give you, not more. Okay.
Then Ben-Hadad sent another message to Ahab. "May the gods deal with me, be it ever so severely, if enough dust remains in Samaria to give each of my men a handful." The king of Israel answered him, "Tell him, one who puts on his armor should not boast like one who takes it off." Ben-Hadad heard this message while he and the kings were drinking in their tents, and he ordered his men, "Prepare to attack." So they prepared to attack the city.
Okay, so what you could probably see here is Ben-Hadad is quite arrogant and very confident of his own ability to do whatever he wants and to, basically say nothing will be left of your soil, right? I'm going to take everything. And when somebody is overly confident, gives you some pause. Okay.
Well, and also they were negotiating.
Yeah, they're negotiating.
Like, hey, I'll give you this, but not this. So it clearly was. So why did Ahab believe that Ben-Hadad was a mightier king,
Well, he seems to
other
have a
than he
lot.
was.
He's got what, 20 other, 32 kings were with him.
Yeah.
But they're
Yeah.
not kings.
They're,
Walter says they're not kings.
yeah, they're warlords,
Mhm.
right? Yeah. But they call themselves kings anyway. Okay, so
So there's
let's,
a lot of testosterone in this passage here. Like
true.
it's
All
choose
right,
like-
keep going.
Okay, so
13.
meanwhile, a prophet, is that where okay, meanwhile,
Yes.
a prophet came to Ahab, king of Israel, and announced, "This is what the Lord says. Do you see this vast army? I will give it into your hand today, and then you will know that I am the Lord." "But who will do this?" asked Ahab. The prophet replied, "This is what the Lord says. The junior officers and the provincial commanders will do it." "And who will start the battle?" he asked. The prophet answered, "You will." So Ahab summoned the 232 junior officers under the provincial commanders. Then he assembled the rest of the Israelites, 7,000 in all. They set out at noon while Ben-Hadad and the 32
Yes.
kings allied with him were in their tents getting drunk. Ooh. The junior officers under the provincial commanders went out first. Now Ben-Hadad had dispatched scouts who reported, "Men are advancing from Samaria." He said, "If they have come out for peace, take them alive. If they have come out for war, take them alive." The junior officers under the provincial commanders marched out of the city with the army behind them, and each one struck down his opponent. And that the Arameans fled, with the Israelites in pursuit. But Ben-Hadad, king of Aram, escaped on horseback with some of his horsemen. The king of Israel advanced and overpowered the horses and chariots and inflicted heavy losses on the Arameans. Afterward, the prophet came to the king of Israel and said, "Strengthen your position and see what must be done, because next spring the king of Aram will attack you again." Meanwhile, the officials of the king of Aram advised him, "Their gods are gods of the hills. That is why they were too strong for us. But if we fight them in the plains," this sounds like Ukraine and Russia, "surely we will be stronger than they. Do this, remove all the kings from their commands and replace them with other officers. You must also raise an army like the one you lost, horse for horse and chariot for chariot, so we can fight Israel on the plains. Maybe the US will give you a subsidy. Then surely we will be stronger than they are." He agreed with them and acted accordingly. The next spring, Ben-Hadad mustered the Arameans and went up to Aphek to fight against Israel. When the Israelites were also mustered and given provisions, they marched out to meet them. The Israelites camped opposite them like two small flocks of goats, while the Arameans covered the countryside. The man of God came up and told the king of Israel, "This is what the Lord says. Because the Arameans think the Lord is God of the hills and not God of the valleys, I will deliver this vast army into your hands, and you will know that I am the Lord." For 7 days they camped opposite each other, and on the seventh day the battle was joined. The Israelites inflicted 100,000 casualties on the
I think it's
Aramean
Aramaean.
soldiers. Aramaean, thank you. Foot soldiers in 1 day. The rest of them escaped to the city of Aphek, where the wall collapsed on 27,000 of them, and Ben-Hadad fled to the city and hid in an inner room. His officials said to him, "Look, we have heard that the kings of Israel are merciful. Let us go to the king of Israel with sackcloth." I wonder where they heard that. "With sackcloth around our waists and ropes around our heads. Perhaps he will spare your life." Wearing sackcloth around their waists and ropes around their heads, they went to the king of Israel and said, "Your servant Ben-Hadad says, 'Please let me live.'" The king answered, "Is he still alive? Is he my brother?" The men took this as a good sign and were quick to pick up his words. "Yes, your brother Ben-Hadad," they said. "Go and get him," the king said. When Ben-Hadad came out, Ahab had him come up into his chariot. "I will return the cities my father took from your father," Ben-Hadad ordered. "You may set up your own market areas in Damascus as my father did in Samaria." Ahab said, "On the basis of a treaty, I will set you free." So I made a treaty with him and let him go.
So there are a couple things here. What do you see? What do you notice about Ahab in this story?
He's a little bit forgiving.
Well, forgiving.
And he listens to God.
Okay.
Well, he's willing to give his silver and not the rest, and this whole war is because of that.
Yeah. But okay, first, you go ahead, Lynn.
Politically, he sort of like a treaty, for peace, you know. You can set up a war, like you used to do, and you can set up like our country like you used to do.
I think that's kind of smart,
Yeah.
right? I
Yeah.
mean, he's forgiving him. Now, you don't know. The
Yeah.
forgiveness might end up biting him, but the intent is let's make a treaty and let's, not be on bad terms with each other, right? I think that's pretty,
But how can, what's his name?
No.
Ahab.
Yeah. He's murdered thousands of people. How can he say, yeah, sure. We can get
Well,
along.
Well, we do that all the time.
Yeah, well, the king, if his life is spared, is willing to forgive all those murderers,
That's all he cares about himself.
But even before we get to the treaty, I mean, he's actually militarily pretty good, right? I mean, this is the thing about Ahab, is that he is a successful king in the sense of economically, politically. I mean, he is able, he's got a strong army. He's able to defeat this enemy. He is making a peace treaty with, I mean, he's not like stupid. He's just disloyal to God. That's his sin.
Yeah, well, I think it's beginning.
Yeah.
But
that's
is he
focus here. It's
disloyal
totally about-
because he starts listening to the prophet? I mean, he starts doing what he's
Yeah,
told.
but
in
which
terms
prophet
of,
is this? Is
It
this
doesn't say.
I don't know. I wondered about that myself. Is this
exactly? It could
Elisha?
very well be the prophet of Baal. Who knows? Or it could be our God.
No, those guys are all dead.
Yeah,
Not all of them.
yeah, they're not all.
No,
could
it
be.
doesn't say.
Yeah.
who.
And he says, I mean, it does say the voice of the Lord.
In 13, it just says a prophet.
Yeah, well, a prophet is, remember there's a guild of prophets, but I do think it is about, Yud-Hey Vav-Hey.
Well, he learned his lesson, like he wakes up and starts listening. So maybe this is an indication that he matures a little bit when
Yeah.
faced with having to.
yeah. Well, I
Sometimes
don't
that
know how-
happens with men. Sorry.
Poor Mitch. There is Mitch, and there are a couple of men here who
Oh, I know.
might take
I
us-
know.
okay. Okay,
They can
so
defend themselves, Rabbi.
yeah, okay. We only have a couple minutes, so I don't think we're gonna go on. Truth is truth, Randy says. No offense meant to any of the other people on this call. Okay,
Of course.
so we're gonna next time we'll see what happens to Ahab and especially to Jezebel. It's very sad, but she did say, if I don't succeed at this, may I be, in the same situation you're in. Well, she will be in more. And also what's going to happen with Elijah and Elisha, because again, when we see Elijah doesn't actually die, he gets taken up into a chariot. And so he is neither dead nor alive. He's sort of in this liminal space. And therefore he is the guy who's going to announce the Messiah, theoretically anyway. Any final comments?
Well, the going up in the chariot is one of the things that the ancient alien scholar found on the History Channel want to say is a spaceship.
Well, yeah, Scientology took that. Flying to, yeah,
To the
Mickey,
extreme, yeah.
Mickey, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm confused here because in chapter 19, it said that on verse 15, it said, when you get there, anoint Hazael as king of Aram
Right.
and Nimshi as king of Israel.
Yeah.
In 20, we get Ben
Hadad, yeah. Well, actually, what Alter says about this business about telling the prophet to anoint somebody the king, I mean, he really didn't have that power. So
Okay.
so it's weird that it's even in there. It says, perhaps this act is meant to manifest God's sovereignty over all nations, but it seems strange and historically altogether unlikely that a Hebrew prophet could have taken upon himself to anoint an Aramaean king. I mean, it's a different country. So, we don't know. Maybe this is left over from some other version of the
Yeah.
story or something. And maybe the guy had two names. Who knows? We don't know. But you're right to point that out. It doesn't really make any sense. And then you have somebody else who's actually the king.
We're still fighting about Samaria.
Yeah, we're still fighting about
Mhm.
Samaria, which is not going to do so well.
Yeah.
Are these the same Sumerians from which we get language?
Yeah, Samaria, not Sumerian.
No.
Samaria.
Aramaic. They're-
Well, Aramaic was like first century.
Mm.
oh, so
Is-
the-
Samaria is basically the north, Judea and Samaria. We could say
Mhm.
Israel and Judea at this point, kind of,
Mhm.
Right,
but it's called Samaria.
and then-
I just want you to know when I use the word men or guy, it's in the universal sense. So it's not just men who don't mature.
Oh,
Just-
okay.
Just in
Good.
case
That makes us
anybody
all
was
feel
offended.
much better.
Thank
you, Melissa.
Yeah.
Hey, Rabbi, did you know that there was no sound on YouTube for Temple Last? Or have you
Yes,
heard
I
this?
got a
Yes. Mm-hmm.
message from Jory last night that there was no sound on
Mhm.
YouTube. I do
Oh.
not
Yeah.
know what the problem was, and Lynn says that on Zoom the sound went in and out. So I don't know what's going on. I did tell
I
Jory that
know.
we had a problem the week before with sound.
We did. Mhm.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
can't explain it. Anyway, yes, every week. It's a challenge.
It's-
All right. Well,
it's-
Shabbat Shalom, everybody.
Shabbat shalom.
Have a great
Shabbat
weekend.
Shalom, everyone.
And
Thank
and
you.
we won't meet next week, but the week after.
Great.
17th.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks,
Hope to
everyone.
see you guys at the
Bye.
Tree of Life dinner. Hi.
Oh, yeah, I hope
Yes.
so.